A wealthy husband ignored his wife for years, until one text made him freeze. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. She learned how quiet a mansion could be at night. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that echoes. The kind that makes your own footsteps sound too loud on marble floors. The kind that reminds you that space does not equal warmth. Her name was Claire. Every evening, at exactly 7 o'clock, she set the table for two, white plates, polished silverware. The same linen napkins folded the same way she had folded them for years. The food was always simple, nothing extravagant. She had learned early on that cooking anything special was pointless. He rarely noticed. Across the table, the chair remained empty. Upstairs, behind a closed office door, her husband worked, or pretended to work. Claire was never quite sure anymore. What she did know was that he was always busy when it came to her. Her husband, Daniel Whitmore, was a wealthy man, a man whose name appeared in business magazines, a man whose schedule was managed by 3 assistants and a digital calendar that never slept, a man who could negotiate multi-million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, yet somehow never found 5 minutes to ask his wife how her day had been. To the outside world, they were a perfect couple, the elegant wife, the powerful husband, the sprawling estate just outside the city, the black luxury sedan in the driveway. But perfection, Claire had learned, was often just silence dressed up nicely. She carried 2 plates to the dining room, then paused. After a moment, she returned 1 plate to the kitchen. She had stopped pretending weeks ago. She ate alone. As she sat there, she stared at the clock on the wall. 7:22. Daniel would not come down. He never did anymore. If he did, it would be to grab a glass of water while checking emails on his phone, his eyes never once meeting hers. Their marriage had not started with love. It had started with necessity. Years earlier, Claire had signed papers at a long glass table in a law office that smelled faintly of coffee and ink. The agreement was clear, a marriage that benefited both families. A public image, stability, appearances. Feelings were not part of the deal. At least, that was what Daniel had said. At first, Claire told herself that distance was temporary, that coldness would soften, that routine would turn into something real if she tried hard enough. She attended every event by his side. She smiled for cameras. She memorized donor names. She learned how to stand quietly while men in suits spoke over her. She never complained, because complaining required being heard. Later that night, Claire stood in their bedroom, folding clothes that did not belong to her. Daniel's shirts, crisp, expensive, untouched by her hands, except for moments like this. She placed them neatly in his closet, as if order could make sense of everything else. On the dresser sat her phone. The screen was dark, no missed calls, no messages, no reason for it to light up. She picked it up, then set it back down again. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow she would finally say something. Downstairs, the sound of Daniel's footsteps echoed briefly as he crossed the hallway, already distracted by a call. His voice was calm, controlled, important. Claire stood still, listening. He passed by without looking up. That was when she realized something had quietly shifted inside her. Not anger, not sadness, something colder, something resolved. She reached for her coat. Tomorrow would be different. She would make sure of it. What Claire did not know was that a single forgotten moment, something as small as a phone left behind, was about to unravel years of silence. Daniel did not realize what he had done until he was already halfway down the driveway. The black sedan rolled to a stop, the engine idling softly as he checked his watch. 7:45. He was late for a call he had scheduled himself. He reached for his phone out of habit, then paused. Something felt off. He glanced at the passenger seat. Claire's phone lay there, face down, tucked between the seat and the console. He frowned slightly. She never left without it. Not once in all the years he had known her. Not even when she went for a short walk around the property. For a moment, he considered picking it up and bringing it back inside. That would have been the polite thing to do, the simple thing. Instead, his phone buzzed in his hand. Another email, another reminder, another demand on his attention. He exhaled and leaned back in the seat. Just 1 second, he told himself. I will grab it and head out. When he picked up Claire's phone, the screen lit up. A message preview appeared. Daniel froze. Not because of what he read at first, but because of who it was from. A name he did not recognize. The message was short, plain. No emojis, no drama. Everything is ready. If you decide to leave tomorrow, the paperwork will be waiting. Daniel's fingers tightened around the phone. Leave? His heartbeat slowed in a way that unsettled him. He told himself not to overreact. People left things all the time. Assistants, business partners, temporary staff. Leaving was normal. But this was Claire. Claire did not leave. Another notification appeared before he could lock the screen. I know this has not been easy. You have done more than anyone could ask. Daniel stared at the words until the glow of the screen felt too bright. His first instinct was anger. Not loud anger, but the cold, controlled kind. The kind he used in boardrooms. The kind that demanded explanations. He scrolled before he could stop himself. The messages were not romantic. There was no betrayal, no secret lover waiting in the shadows. What he saw instead unsettled him far more. There were messages about documents, about housing, about timelines, about Claire making sure everything was handled quietly, without drawing attention, without involving him. One message stood out. I do not want anything from him. I just want to leave with my dignity intact. Daniel swallowed. He had negotiated hostile takeovers with less resistance than the knot forming in his chest. For the first time in years, he realized how little he actually knew about the woman he lived with. The woman who had shared his name, his home, his public life. His phone buzzed again, but he did not look at it. Inside the house, Claire moved through the bedroom with calm precision. She folded the last sweater and placed it into a suitcase that was far too small for a life measured in years. She had chosen it on purpose. She did not want to take more than she needed. Her hands did not shake. That surprised her. She had imagined this moment so many times, always filled with fear or sadness or regret. Instead, she felt clear, grounded, as if a decision made long ago had finally caught up with her. She checked the time. Daniel would be gone by now. That was good. She did not want a scene. She never had. Downstairs, the front door opened. Claire paused. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, faster than usual, uneven, wrong. Daniel appeared in the doorway. He looked different, not angry, not distracted, not distant, unsettled. Claire? He said, her name sounding unfamiliar on his tongue. She turned slowly. Yes? He held her phone out in front of him, as if it weighed more than it should. You forgot this, he said. Her eyes flicked to the phone, then back to his face. She did not reach for it. I know, she replied calmly. Daniel hesitated. I read something, he said. By accident. Silence stretched between them. Claire nodded once, not surprised, not defensive. I assumed you might, she said. That was when Daniel realized something else. This was not a secret he had uncovered. This was a truth she had already accepted. And for the first time since their marriage began, Daniel understood that whatever control he thought he had was already slipping away. Daniel did not sit down. He stood near the door, Claire's phone still in his hand, as if setting it down would mean losing whatever fragile control he had left. The room felt smaller than it ever had before, despite the high ceilings and wide windows. I did not mean to read it, he said. Claire let out a slow breath, not a sigh, just air leaving her lungs, steady and measured. I believe you, she replied. That answer unsettled him more than anger would have. Daniel waited for questions, accusations, tears, something that would place him back in familiar territory, where emotions could be managed like risks on a balance sheet. None came. Instead, Claire walked past him and closed the suitcase. The sound of the zipper echoed louder than it should have. You were not supposed to find out like that, she said, still not looking at him. But it does not change anything. It changes everything, Daniel said sharply. She finally turned to face him. No, she said. It only changes things for you. The words landed with quiet precision. Daniel frowned. You were planning to leave, he said, as if saying it aloud would make it less real. Yes. Without telling me. Yes. Without asking for anything. Claire met his gaze. Her expression was calm, but there was something firm beneath it. I spent years asking, she said, just not with words. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. His mind searched for arguments, explanations, defenses. All the tools he used so easily in negotiations failed him now. When? He finally asked. Claire glanced at the clock on the wall. Tomorrow morning. The simplicity of the answer struck him hard. You already decided, he said. I decided a long time ago, she replied. I just waited until I was certain I could leave without becoming someone I did not respect. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. He looked tired, older than he had earlier that evening. Is this about the marriage? He asked. About the agreement? Claire considered the question. It started that way, she said, but it became about something else. What? Being invisible. The word lingered between them. Claire walked to the window and looked out at the dark lawn. I knew what I was agreeing to back then, she continued. I did not expect love. I did not expect affection. I only expected honesty. Daniel stiffened. I was honest. You were clear about the terms, she said, but not about the cost. He said nothing. I learned how to shrink myself, Claire went on, how to speak less, how to need less, how to disappear quietly so your life could run smoothly. She turned back to him. That was the part you never noticed. Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. Why did you not say something? He asked again, softer this time. I did, she answered. Every time you walked past me, every dinner you skipped, every conversation that never happened. She paused. You just did not hear me. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Daniel looked around the room. The bed, the furniture, the space they shared yet somehow never occupied together. For the first time, he saw the absence he had created. I can fix this, he said quickly, the words tumbling out before he could temper them. If you are unhappy, we can change things, adjust schedules, set boundaries. You do not have to leave. Claire studied him carefully. Are you offering that because you want me to stay? She asked, or because you do not want to be the man whose wife walked away? The question hit its mark. Daniel hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough. Claire picked up the suitcase. I do not hate you, she said quietly. I never did, but I cannot stay where I am not seen. She moved toward the door. Claire, Daniel said, his voice lower now, what would it take for you to stay? She stopped, her back still to him. It would take something you have never given before, she replied. And what is that? She turned, meeting his eyes one last time. Choice, she said. Not obligation, not appearances. Choice. With that, she walked past him, leaving Daniel alone in the room, holding a phone that had finally shown him the truth he could no longer ignore. Daniel did not sleep that night. He sat in his office long after the house went dark, the lights from his computer screen casting sharp angles across the walls. Emails piled up unanswered, calls went ignored. For the first time in years, work felt distant, irrelevant. His mind replayed Claire's words again and again. I cannot stay where I am not seen. He had built companies from nothing. He had turned failing divisions into profitable ones through discipline and focus. When something was broken, he fixed it. That was who he was. But this was not a system. It was a person. Near dawn, Daniel stood by the window and watched the sky slowly lighten. Somewhere upstairs, Claire was packing the last pieces of a life she was prepared to leave behind. He realized something then that unsettled him deeply. He had never actually chosen her. Not fully. Their marriage had begun as a solution, a strategy, a clean arrangement that made sense on paper. Somewhere along the way, he had mistaken efficiency for stability, silence for acceptance. He had assumed she would always be there. That assumption now felt dangerously fragile. Daniel did something he had not done in years. He canceled his morning meetings. He shut down his laptop, picked up his keys, and walked upstairs. Claire was in the bedroom when he knocked, not because she needed permission, but because for once, he wanted to ask. She opened the door slowly. Her expression was guarded, but calm. I thought you would already be gone, he said. I leave in an hour, she replied. Daniel nodded. Can we talk? She studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. He noticed the room immediately, the empty drawers, the closet with gaps where her clothes used to be. The absence felt loud. I am not here to stop you, he said, not like before. Claire crossed her arms, waiting. "I am here because I finally understand what you meant," Daniel continued. "You were right. I never chose you. I only accepted you as part of the arrangement." Her eyes did not soften. "I am not asking for forgiveness," he added quickly. "I am asking for one chance to choose differently." Claire took a slow breath. "And what does that look like to you?" Daniel hesitated. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. He placed it on the bed between them. It was the original agreement, the marriage contract. "I had legal draft this prepared years ago," he said. "It protected assets, image, control." He met her gaze. "Today, I asked them to void it." Claire's eyes flicked to the document, then back to him. "You did not have to do that," she said. "I know," Daniel replied. "That is why I did." Silence filled the room. "This does not fix everything," Claire said carefully. "I know," he agreed. "But it is a start." She shook her head slightly. "You cannot erase years of neglect with one gesture." "I am not trying to erase them," Daniel said. "I am trying to take responsibility for them." He took a step closer, then stopped, respecting the space she had claimed. "I am asking you to stay," he said, voice steady. "Not because it looks better, not because it is easier, but because I want to learn how to see you, even if it means you decide later that this still is not enough." Claire looked at the clock. 30 minutes. She picked up her suitcase and set it down again. "If I stay," she said slowly, "it will not be as your obligation, and not as your accessory." Daniel nodded. "I understand." "And if you go back to who you were?" she asked. "Then you leave," he said, "and I will not stop you." She searched his face for calculation, for control, for the man she had known. What she saw instead unsettled her. Vulnerability. Claire exhaled. "I will stay," she said, "for now." Daniel did not smile. He did not celebrate. He only nodded, as if acknowledging the weight of what she had just given him. Choice. And for the first time in their marriage, it was real. The house felt different after that morning. Not warmer, not softer, just awake. Daniel noticed it first in the small things. The sound of footsteps that no longer startled him. The absence of tension when he entered a room. Claire no longer moved around him like a guest trying not to disturb the owner of the house. She moved like someone who belonged. They did not pretend everything was suddenly fixed. That would have been a lie. For the first few days, they spoke carefully, like two people learning a new language. Conversations were short, honest, sometimes uncomfortable. Daniel listened more than he spoke, not because he had mastered humility, but because he was afraid of missing something again. Claire noticed the change. He came home for dinner, not every night, but more than before. When he could not, he sent a message, a simple one. No explanations, no excuses. "I will be late tonight. I am sorry." It surprised her how much that mattered. One evening, nearly a week after she had planned to leave, they sat across from each other at the dining table. 2 plates, 2 glasses, no phones. Daniel cleared his throat. "There is something I need to do," he said. Claire looked up. "What kind of something?" "The kind I should have done years ago." The next morning, Daniel asked her to come with him to the office, not as a guest, not as an accessory, as his wife. Claire hesitated before agreeing. Public spaces had always been where she felt smallest, where she was expected to smile and say nothing. When they arrived, the reaction was immediate. Conversations paused, heads turned, a few surprised glances, a few polite smiles. Daniel did not walk ahead of her. He walked beside her. In the main conference room, his senior team waited, the same men and women who had ignored Claire at countless events, who had spoken around her, over her, past her. Daniel stood at the head of the table. "Before we begin," he said calmly, "there is something I need to clarify." The room fell silent. "This is my wife, Claire Whitmore," he continued. "Not a formality, not an appearance. She has been part of my life longer than most of you. If you address me, you address her with the same respect." Claire felt her chest tighten. Daniel did not look at her for approval. He did not pause for reaction. He meant it. One of the executives shifted uncomfortably. Another nodded slowly. The message was clear. Later, in the car, Claire said nothing for a long time. "You did not have to do that," she finally said. "Yes, Daniel replied quietly. I did. That afternoon, Claire received a message on her phone from the same contact Daniel had seen days earlier. I canceled the paperwork, not because I was asked to, because I chose to. She stared at the screen, then locked it. That night, they sat together on the back terrace, watching the lights of the city in the distance. The air was cool, comfortable. I am not promising forever, Claire said. I am promising honesty. Daniel nodded. That is more than I deserve. She looked at him then, really looked at him. Not the wealthy husband, not the distant figure behind closed doors. A man trying to unlearn himself. I am still afraid, she admitted. So am I, Daniel said. But this time, I am afraid of losing you, not control. Claire leaned back in her chair. For years, she had believed love would arrive loudly, dramatically, like something from a story she once read and put away. She was beginning to understand that real love sometimes arrived quietly, with effort, with choice, with a man who finally learned to stop ignoring what mattered most. And this time, when her phone lit up on the table between them, neither of them looked away. The first real test came sooner than Claire expected. It arrived wrapped in crystal glasses, polished smiles, and a ballroom filled with people who had never learned to listen. The annual Whitmore Foundation Gala was not optional. It was the kind of event that lived on calendars months in advance, the kind Daniel had always attended alone, or with Claire standing half a step behind him, quiet and forgettable. This time, things were different. At least, they were supposed to be. Claire stood in front of the mirror, smoothing the fabric of a simple navy dress. Nothing extravagant, nothing designed to draw attention. She had chosen it deliberately. She was not there to impress. She was there to stand. Daniel appeared behind her, adjusting his cufflinks. You do not have to do this, he said softly. Claire met his eyes in the reflection. Yes, I do. The drive to the venue passed in silence, but not the uncomfortable kind. The kind filled with awareness, with anticipation. The moment they stepped inside, Claire felt it. The shift. Eyes turned. Whispers followed. Some curious, some confused, some clearly disapproving. She recognized a few faces. Board members, donors, people who had smiled politely at her for years without ever bothering to remember her name. Daniel did not release her hand. As they moved through the room, conversations stalled. One woman leaned toward another, her voice low but sharp. I thought she was temporary, she said, not quietly enough. Claire heard it. Daniel heard it too. He stopped. The woman froze. Daniel turned to her calmly. Claire Whitmore, he said, placing a hand lightly at Claire's back. My wife. The woman flushed. Of course, I did not mean... I know what you meant, Daniel replied evenly. Do not repeat it. They moved on. Claire's heart pounded, but she did not look away. For the first time, she did not feel the need to disappear. Later that evening, as Daniel was pulled into a conversation near the stage, Claire found herself standing alone near the bar. She reached for a glass of water when a familiar voice spoke behind her. I did not expect to see you here. Claire turned. Evelyn Hart, a longtime board member, powerful, influential, and openly critical of Claire since the beginning. I am Daniel's wife, Claire replied calmly. It would be strange if I were not. Evelyn smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Some arrangements last longer than others, she said. I hope you are enjoying yours. Claire understood the message immediately. You do not belong here, and everyone knows it. I am, Claire said simply, more than I used to. Evelyn tilted her head. Enjoy it while it lasts. She walked away. Claire stood still, her chest tight. The old instinct rose quickly, the urge to step back, to retreat, to let the moment pass. She did not. Instead, she lifted her head and moved toward the crowd. On stage, Daniel was being introduced. Applause filled the room. He began speaking about growth, about vision, about responsibility. Then he paused. There is someone I need to acknowledge tonight, he said. Claire's breath caught. For years, I believed leadership meant control, Daniel continued. But I was wrong. Leadership means accountability, especially in your own home. Murmurs rippled through the room. My wife, Claire, has stood beside me through every version of myself, he said, including the worst ones. I failed to see that. I will not make that mistake again. All eyes turned to her. Daniel stepped down from the stage and walked toward her. Not hurried, not dramatic, intentional. He stopped in front of her. "This is not for show," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "This is me choosing you, in front of everyone who needs to see it." Claire felt something shift inside her. Not relief, not victory, validation. She placed her hand in his. Across the room, Evelyn Hart watched in silence, her expression unreadable. Claire did not look away. For the first time, she understood something clearly. This was not the end of the test. It was only the beginning. And this time, she was no longer facing it alone. The fallout began the next morning. Daniel was halfway through his first meeting when his assistant knocked, her expression carefully neutral. "The board would like to see you," she said, immediately. Claire was in the garden when she received the message. Daniel had not called. That worried her more than silence ever had before. Inside the boardroom, the mood was sharp, controlled, polite in the way only powerful people could be when they were displeased. Evelyn Hart sat near the center of the table, her hands folded, her posture impeccable. Daniel took his seat without speaking. "We need to address last night," one of the board members began. "Your remarks were unexpected." "They were honest," Daniel replied. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Honesty is admirable, but public vulnerability is not always strategic." Daniel met her gaze. "My marriage is not a strategy." A murmur passed through the room. "You made a personal matter very public," another voice added. "Investors have already reached out. There are concerns about distraction, about image." Daniel leaned forward. "My image has never been the issue. My priorities were." Evelyn tilted her head. "Be careful," she said smoothly. "Foundations thrive on perception, stability, continuity. You would not want personal complications to threaten that." Daniel understood the implication immediately. Claire. That afternoon, Claire was invited to lunch, not by Daniel, by Evelyn Hart. The restaurant was quiet, expensive, neutral territory. "You were very brave last night," Evelyn said once they were seated. "Very visible." Claire did not flinch. "That was the point," Evelyn smiled. "Visibility comes with consequences. You have been protected from them for a long time." "Protected," Claire repeated softly. "Yes," Evelyn said. "From scrutiny, from expectation, from responsibility." Claire set her glass down. "Are you suggesting I am a liability?" "I am suggesting," Evelyn replied, "that this arrangement has worked because you knew your place." The words were deliberate. Claire felt the familiar tightening in her chest, the old instinct to withdraw, to shrink. She did not. "My place," she said calmly, "is beside my husband. If that is inconvenient, that is not my problem." Evelyn's smile faded. "You underestimate how fragile your position is." Claire leaned forward. "No, I finally understand it." That evening, Daniel found Claire packing again. Not fully, just enough to notice. "What is this?" he asked. "A precaution," she said. "I told you, if you go back to who you were, I leave." Daniel shook his head. "This is not that." "The board," Claire said. "Evelyn." Daniel went still. "She spoke to you," he said. "Yes." And she reminded me that people like her do not lose quietly." Daniel took a step toward her. "I will handle this." Claire looked at him steadily. "You do not need to handle me. You need to choose me, again, even when it costs you." Daniel hesitated, not long, but long enough. Claire closed the suitcase. "I am not walking away," she said. "I am preparing myself in case you do." The silence that followed was heavy with truth. This was the real test. Not a speech, not a gesture, not a public moment. But what Daniel would do when choosing her meant risking everything else. Daniel did not go back to the boardroom that afternoon. Instead, he went somewhere he had avoided for years. Home. He arrived before sunset, the house quiet except for the distant sound of Claire moving upstairs. He stood in the entryway for a long moment, as if crossing it required a decision he could no longer postpone. When he found her, she was sitting at the edge of the bed, the suitcase still open, folded clothes visible inside. Not rushing, not dramatic, just ready. "I spoke to Evelyn," Daniel said. Claire did not look up. "I assumed you would. She wants me to choose," he continued. Quietly, comfortably, in a way that keeps everything the same. Claire closed the suitcase part way, then stopped. And what do you want? Daniel took a breath, a real one, the kind he used to take before signing something irreversible. I want to stop pretending that success means never losing anything, he said. Sometimes it means letting go of what no longer deserves control. Claire finally met his eyes. That is not an answer, she said gently. Daniel nodded. You are right. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. Not Claire's, his own. I asked for an emergency session, he said. Tonight. Claire's brow furrowed. With the board? With the foundation, Daniel replied. And the donors who think they own my silence. Her heartbeat quickened. Daniel, I know, he said. This is not safe. It is not strategic. And it may cost me more than you think. He stepped closer. But if I walk away from you now, I lose something I cannot replace. The meeting took place in the same room where countless decisions had been made behind closed doors. The same room where Claire had once stood quietly against a wall, invisible. This time, Daniel did not sit. I will be brief, he said, looking around the table. I am aware there are concerns about my personal life. Evelyn Hart folded her hands. We are concerned about stability. Daniel nodded. So am I. He continued. I have spent years asking my marriage to fit into this foundation. That was a mistake. My marriage is not an accessory. It is not a liability, and it will no longer be treated as one. A sharp inhale from someone at the far end of the table. If my leadership requires silence at home, Daniel said, then this role no longer fits me. The room went still. Evelyn's expression tightened. You are prepared to jeopardize everything you built? Daniel's voice did not waver. I am prepared to protect what matters more. He slid a document across the table. Not a resignation, a restructuring proposal. One that shifted power, reduced influence, removed Evelyn from her unchecked position. This foundation will continue, Daniel said, with or without my name. But my wife will not be used as leverage again. Later that night, Daniel returned home. Claire was still awake. It is done, he said. She searched his face. What did it cost you? Less than losing you, he answered. More than I expected. Claire closed the suitcase completely. Then she pushed it aside. This does not make us perfect, she said. I'm not asking for perfect, Daniel replied. I'm asking for honest. She stood, stepping into the space between them. For the first time, Claire said quietly, I believe you. Daniel did not reach for her. He waited, and when she took his hand, it was not because she had to. It was because she chose to. The change did not happen overnight. It happened in moments so small they would have been easy to miss. Morning coffee, poured for 2 instead of 1. A message sent before a late meeting, not after. A question asked, then waited for. Claire noticed all of it. Weeks passed, then months. The house no longer felt like a place she was borrowing time in. It felt lived in, shared, sometimes imperfect, sometimes quiet, but never empty. One evening, as autumn settled in and the air turned crisp, Daniel asked Claire to walk with him through the back garden. The lights along the path glowed softly, illuminating the trees that had stood witness to years of silence. Claire slowed her steps. You are nervous, she said. Daniel smiled faintly. I am. They stopped near the far end of the property, where the noise of the world felt distant. Daniel turned to face her, his expression steady but open. I spent years believing that commitment meant control, he said. I was wrong. Commitment means choosing the same person again, even when the cost changes. Claire listened without interrupting. I asked you to stay once, Daniel continued. That was not enough. Staying should never be a favor. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He did not kneel. He did not rush. I am not asking you to forgive the past, he said. I am asking you to decide the future with me, freely, without contracts, without expectations. He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, elegant, unassuming, chosen with intention. Claire felt her breath catch. You already were my wife, Daniel said quietly. This time, I want to be your husband. For a long moment, Claire said nothing. She thought of the woman she had been when she packed her suitcase, the woman who believed leaving was the only way to save herself. She thought of the man standing in front of her now, no longer hiding behind power or distance. "I will not promise forever," she said softly. "I will promise honesty, and effort, and choice." Daniel nodded. "That is all I want." Claire reached out, closing his fingers around hers. "Yes," she said. The word was calm, certain, real. Months later, they married quietly. No headlines, no spectacle, just people who mattered, gathered in a place that felt like home. Claire walked toward Daniel without fear, without doubt, without feeling small. When she took his hand, there was no contract waiting behind it, only commitment. Years after, when people spoke of Daniel Whitmore, they still spoke of success, of leadership, of wealth. But those closest to him noticed something else. He listened. And when asked what changed him, Daniel never mentioned the boardroom, or the gala, or the night everything almost ended. He mentioned a phone left behind in a car, a moment when silence finally spoke, and a woman who chose to stay only after she was truly seen. Because love, he learned, was not proven by what you could provide. It was proven by what you were willing to risk. And this time, he chose right.